Say a few words about AMI, and then we'll open the floor for questions about whatever you want to ask. If it's something I don't feel I can answer very well, I'll just tell you. But let me say a little bit about what I'm getting ready to do. We are in the process of finalizing the acquisition of 78 acres property, very close to Andrews University. I mean, my church tried 3 or 4 times to buy property for a nature school and just never worked. And then this happens. And I don't think I should go into all the details right now, but I will tell you that the Lord gave it to us we have to buy it, but he gave it to us on terms that were exactly what we wanted without having to ask for it. So the owner is as excited about us getting the property as I think we are about getting it ourselves. And at first, when Dan Bakioki called him, he said, I don't even know if I want to sell it. He didn't want a hotel or a truck stop or anything else going in on it. It is close to a major 4-lane road. But he is just so excited about it, and we're so excited about it. We are, it's a big undertaking, but I think as Adventists, we've kind of not done. What was that quote, Colleen, by A.W. Tozer? It's too bad to only attempt things we can do in our human power and not give God a chance to do the things only he can do. It's by A.W. Tozer, who was a pastor in Chicago. I didn't say it as good as it was quoted, but I believe what's really hurt the Adventist church is asking too little of our members. And Christian Service, page 72, I think it is, Ellen White says the pastor's job is to put everybody to work. And I took that to heart. So I started creating places for people to do something for God, and guess what? They fell more in love with God while they were doing it. And AMI will be no different. Our first building will be a media center, administration center, and IT center. We're going to set up a tent in the better times of the year when we can have a big old tent, like a camp meeting at times. At least this is my hope. And we'll start using the property right away. What will happen, I hope, is I've had a good relationship with the president of the university. And it's my hope that one of the doctors that's going to be working with us, who has a good relationship with the university, that we can fulfill the prophecy Ellen White talked about. She said in the due course of time, a sanitarium was to be built in Berrien Springs, not to compete with any other sanitariums, but for the training of the students. Now, our young people are being picked off left and right by illustrious careers that leave the church looking like it's been run over and kicked to the side of the road. And what I really think, if we want to keep them and take them to heaven, we're going to have to give them a chance to be the hands and the heart and the voice and the feet of God. So that sanitarium we're going to build will be particularly a training institution. If it works out how we think, it'll work as a complement to the primary care facility that the Village Church purchased and is remodeling. And then we will be building a convention center, an event center on it. We'll be building a K-8 school that has a bunch of cabins for individualized learning, or I should say individualized classroom learning. And then we'll be doing an academy of the same similar nature. We'll have a farm on it. And we'll build the medical missionary work right there too. Now, personally, I'd love to work together on these kind of things like Lee and I worked in Montana on the Poplar Church. And being at the Poplar Church on the east side of Montana, I was convinced it's time for groups to start going back there. And AMI will coordinate those kind of groups. Advent Mission Institute. Our website is ami365.org. And I really believe we need a renaissance of joy through Adventist mission work. I can see the picture up here on the back screen is the picture of our property. If you go to our website, you'll get a kind of a animation of all the buildings. We do have a doctor that has pledged to buy 38 acres for us next to our 78, so we'll have 116 acres. And I'm thankful for what everyone can do, but I'm hoping no matter what a person's trade or interest is, that they'll consider coming and being part of what I consider the joy of Adventist fellowship while we work for God. So I think that what I learned at Cicero and what I learned at Village, now God wants me to teach. I'm going to be teaching a Institute of Church Renewal. You know, there's spiritual laws and there's leadership laws. And if you don't understand them, you can't renew a church. Plan to teach homiletics and leadership along with a variety of other classes. But of course, the medical missionary work will be led by one of our preeminent physicians in that realm, as long as we get everything worked out, but it's looking like it. How fast are we going to go? We're going to go as fast as, really, to be honest, the money comes in, because Dan Bakioki has a team of people. He has a team of probably 5 renderers and architects. He's already working on the plans for the media center. And my sense is that God provided for a quick build-up at Village. I think he's going to provide for a quick build-up here. Yeah, Jesus is coming. Ellen White was asked about that once. She said, she was asked, why are you spending all this money on the institutions? And she said, you know, publishing, medical, and education. She said, basically, these things need to go forward. And she said, think about not doing so much for yourself, as my loose paraphrase, and start putting it into the work. So we've been saying Jesus is coming for the last 150 years. It's true. Every generation gets reminders. Right now, we have a lot of them. But we can't stop and wring our hands. We're supposed to just go forward best we can, because it's by doing that we're transformed. So we're going forward with AMI. And as God moves on people's hearts, I believe it can become a renaissance for not only the North American division, but for the world church. And I'll say one more thing. Adventism has kind of drifted into the arms of the world, and it can't have spiritual vitality while it's doing that. Now, that's way too glaring. It's person by person and congregation by congregation. But wherever Adventism recommits to work with God, God comes into a committed work relationship with them, and things start to happen. I've never been let down by God. I've tried to pray my way with my elders and board and church into God's leading, and at this point in time, I'm absolutely convinced, because I didn't really want to do AMI, to be very honest. It would have been much easier for me to take a job in the denomination, of which I was offered some. And it would have relieved me of a bit of the stigmata that is on me in the minds of some, because it's not easy to get fired in the Adventist church. So when you get fired, everybody thinks you did something. I did do something. I had some challenging interactions with the organization regarding some challenging situations that were both local and in the world church. And those got difficult. And without saying too much, so that's AMI. Very good. Thank you for listening and let me talk about it. I think maybe towards the end there'll be a way, if you want to financially partner with me, that'd be great. My wife has business cards. You want to wave your hand over there so they can see who you are? That's my wife, Colleen. She's a 4th grade teacher, my partner in ministry. All right, I think this is a question and answer session, so I'm going to turn it over to our roving Soren. Looks like he's got a mic. I don't know if anyone else does. I'll try to answer your questions best I can. I'm not an expert on much, but I can tell you from my perspective what I think on whatever you ask. All right, question right here.
I regularly get sent requests from PUC where I went to school about all the stuff they want from me, but they've gone so far away from where I am philosophically, religiously, it's hard to support that. What is your perspective on the existing Adventist schools and how, at least to some, they're moving more to the left, and how should we interact with them?
Well, is it Ralph Trecarton who's the president there? Right, at PUC? Yeah, Ralph Trecarton has a picture of me in his office. The picture that was put up when I got fired of me standing before the court, Ralph Trecarton has that picture hanging in his office. Ralph is trying to bring that institution back. The problem with a college is that it attracts and needs men and women of higher education, but they forget that the gospel is simple. So what I would say to you is, I would encourage you to reach out to him directly and see if there's anything you can do to help him, because I'll tell you what helps a leader: prayers, encouragement, and money. And if you don't have money, your willingness to do something. I know Maranatha came onto the campus of Andrews and is helping renovate Lamson Hall, the girls' dormitory. So I know Ralph personally. He is a personal friend of my wife. Their families grew up together in Maine. And I believe he's trying to bring it back to its roots. But you Westerners, and I don't know if you're a native Westerner or not, are very independent-minded people, which is good. And in some places, it seems so independent-minded that the Bible and the spirit of prophecy no longer get to have the last word. Now, it sounds like you believe in that still. I would do a lot of thinking about where I sent my child to school. You look like you're a young man still, yeah. Got a few years before you're off to college. Here's the challenge. There are some people in our institutions that don't really believe what Adventism believes. Trying to fix that is very difficult, but it should be done. And really, right now inside of Adventism, there's a sense that Ellen White is not an inspired commentator on the Bible. She's just one of many other commentators. So it's really a bit of a war on against what we have historically believed to be her prophetic role. Some of the independent colleges are certified, accredited, but they're doing a really good work. Training your son, and if you have other children, how to stand for what they believe is important, because no matter where he goes, even if he goes to one that's a lot closer to the blueprint, there's always going to be influences there. So you have a follow-up, or did I get close enough on that for you? Or here, listen, I need everybody to understand where I'm at. I feel like I got run over by the institution. I love the institution. Sometimes I think I'm maybe looking through too rose-colored glasses of it. But I still hope and pray our institutions can come back to their original mandate and train our men and women to grow up to be missionaries. That go out into the workplace or the mission field, and they're not different in some sense, and they transform the world. So when I went to Andrews University 40 years ago, we had a professor even then that was kind of going off and saying and doing his own thing. I still remember this one young woman who was in a Bible class with me, and she stood up and confronted him. She didn't get out of her seat, but she did confront him, and she was nice about it. She was right and he was wrong. And we're going to have to raise young people like that. So I encourage you as a dad, spend time with your boy, your kids, teach them how to walk with God, teach them how to think for themselves. That's the problem right now. Everybody wants an expert to tell them what to think. So, all right, someone else? See one in the back over here.
What was your final counsel to the young man who called you about conflict with marrying a young woman and the parents being in conflict?
Well, my counsel to him in the beginning was to be humble and to show proper honor to everybody, but to follow his prayed over convictions in dialogue. And when he called back, I don't think I could have been more proud that I think he did it. Now, how did it end up? The only thing I know about how it's ended up is that he grew. And what will be the end product, I don't know, but I do know this. If as a parent you're not self-aware and you don't draw proper boundaries about where your influence needs to be minimizing over time, if you can't be objective, in that situation, the two parents didn't appreciate each other. Well, come on, let's let the grown-ups be grown-ups. They need to get together and talk so they're not compromising the next generation's dialogue. And if the next generation's not supposed to bond, to court, bond, and marry, then they need a unified front. But the kids shouldn't have to be sorting through the absence of Christian maturity in the lives of their parents, but it happens. It happens. You know, my mother didn't lead me to Christ except to force me into that church school. And so there are times when the kids have to say respectfully to the parents, you know, I respect you, I've tried to honor you, but I don't feel as a young adult now you're correspondingly being honest with yourself about how this stress up above us and the generation above me is affecting your objectivity here. I mean, how would you feel if you had to be linked forever through marriage to people you didn't even like? And, you know, I think that my sermon title was How to Endure a Bad Marriage Till Death Do Us Part. There's nothing about that I'm planning to ever live out in my life, and nobody here should, although, you know, some people have to. So in the end, he grew. When he called me back a couple months later, it's like, I'm really proud of you. He was respectful to his parents, but he still communicated his own sense of Christian manhood. And I don't know what else he could do. All right, any follow-ups on that? Yeah, mom and dad don't get to pick. I do believe in arranged marriages, but it's not through the parents. It's with the parents. God is the arranger. And if we can teach our kids to not make their courtship fiance the idol of their life. But there's nothing more intoxicating than love, especially infatuation, which is a form of love. It's actually a God-ordained emotional high to make it through the pitfalls of learning about each other. But it can't last forever, although it should never be completely gone from the marriage. So, 3 things to make a good relationship work: trust, respect, and affection. And a lot of people have those 3 in place until they get married. And then they don't solve their problems and the affection starts draining out. And many a wife will stay with a man who's kind of a big, well, I'll choose my words carefully, but he's kind of a big boy for about 20 years. And then when the kids are grown up, they say, c'est la vie, goodbye. And what I've found in my ministry is that when they get that far, it's over. There is no recovery. It's partially the wife's fault because she should have spoke up and been saying, hey, you shouldn't be treating me like that, or the kids. And it's a big part of the man's fault. But if you're married to somebody and you don't have enough internal fortitude to tell him, you're treating me the wrong way, then he's just going to keep getting worse at what he's good at. And that's how you get to those situations. I wish I had no experience with them. I'm not a social worker by profession, but I'm a social worker by profession. And the good news is my counsel from the Bible is inspired. We're not guessing on peer-reviewed science. And if people are willing, they can rebuild. But I do want to remind people, if you're on the wrong train, I still have these 2 friends. They were in Africa on a mission trip, and they thought they'd hop a train. The problem is they hopped on the train and it kept picking up speed. Eventually, when it was going probably 35 miles an hour, they jumped off. Fortunately, they didn't fly into a telephone pole or a concrete abutment or something like that. But the problem with being on the wrong train is it keeps picking up speed. So it's super important what happens in courtship. I personally think the young man was getting the practice he was going to need for his future wife, whether it was her or someone else. And hopefully she was getting it too. So, all right, any other questions? Yep, right here.
Thank you. I've been in 2 different churches and had two incidences in one church and another incident in another church. One was at the table during an evangelistic series, Bible study, when we had guests that were at the table. Another time was hearing it from the pulpit, and the other time was over a fellowship meal after church. And what it is it's politics. And,
Politics?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've had to turn to someone, I turned to someone in the fellowship hall, this is years ago, and I had to say, excuse me, there may be guests in the room and we don't know their affiliation. Could you please not talk about this? Another time, I heard it from the pulpit and I got into a bunch of trouble because I left the room and stood at the back and just went like this because I did not want to hear any more from the pulpit, and I was called on the carpet for that. And another time somebody called me, she didn't directly call me, but I don't know. Anyway, I don't know how to handle it. I tried to handle it myself and it doesn't work. So do I go to the pastor, and if I don't get it through the pastor, then where do you go so that people aren't talking politics? And I'm not talking about Daniel and Revelation and the papacy and stuff like that. I'm talking the politics from the pulpit.
Okay, good question. I do want to encourage everybody, as much as this part of the world may be typically very right-leaning, conservative politically, that you bring up an exceptional point. So I'd like to kind of divide it into two subjects. In the early days of Adventism, most of the Adventist posture on abolition was completely Republican. James White would go so far as to say that everybody needed to vote for Abraham Lincoln. That doesn't make it right that he said that, but abolition was a Republican platform in the 1860s. So the difference between running down Joe Biden or Donald Trump is a little different than the subject matter, which has its own political attachments. So Ellen White would go so far as to say, if you did not believe in abolition, there was no place for you. You didn't really deserve to be enrolled on the books of the remnant church. So I just want to make sure that we don't moralize as wrong all cultural discussions because one half of the political spectrum is aligned with maybe how we're thinking. But Ellen White will talk about avoiding not the moral issues that are in society that may be left or right, but she will talk about getting in the way of the gospel by just dealing in the raw politics of person and party. So I think it's party politics that we are to avoid. If you voted for this person or that person, that's your business. It's not a very good idea, typically, to delve into that, especially if you're not with friends where it seems like a reasonable discussion, because there may be somebody there who stumbles over your party politics. But when the last 5 years we went through, we did see political alignment around some of the subjects that were in the culture. So for instance, mandates, not the vaccine, although the vaccine was mandated. Mandates did end up having a more robust opposition inside the Republican Party. They were against them. Whereas the Democratic Party was pushing that if you love your neighbor, you need to do this. So I think it is important that we don't hang our hopes on any human politicians. They're going to all disappoint us. It doesn't matter what side they're on. The problem is we're watching the value system of America do this so terribly that when it gets way over here, we'd like it to get here, but we may pick way over here. And recently I was somewhere else and I walked by a door on a room and it said no kings. And I didn't even know what it was talking about until I got to where I could watch the news. And no kings. And so I don't even want to go into it, but I will say this. The top that used to spin is wobbling. When it falls over, I don't know, but we don't want to make party politics at the center of anything we're doing. But we cannot avoid the discussions that impinge, in this case, on religious liberty. That's my belief. Religious liberty for the African American 150 years ago was abolition. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church landed squarely on the side of abolition. Was it political? You could make a case it was, but it wasn't party politics. It was morality that was aligning. If it aligned, great. You know, some people got mad at us in Village. They voted into the Constitution of the Michigan State Legislature a law enshrining the protection of an abortion. The doctor that was on my staff at that point in time got up and made a video about it, and boy, some people came unglued over it. The Bible says Christians defend the defenseless. I don't know anybody more defenseless than a baby in the womb. And I don't want to oversimplify the complicating dynamics that come occasionally, but those are the exceptions, not the rule. And unfortunately, a lot of our people are ignorant about our history in regards to where we aligned on moral issues in society. Abolition, prohibition was another one. Ellen White would say, if the vote for prohibition happens on Sabbath, go vote. Prohibition kind of went down in a bad way. It created a bunch of backlash. People were bootlegging. But our pioneers were never afraid of taking on a moral issue inside of society, no matter who it aligned with. Let's avoid party politics, because those people are going to disappoint us. And let's deal with morality. And I found the greatest way for people to shoot at me or others is to say I'm being political. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you don't know our Adventist history very well. Now, it sounds like you tried to be discreet in how you handle it. That's good. And I affirm that very much. So on party politics, let's leave it out of church. Let's leave it out of most of our conversations. On moral issues inside our culture, even though they're aligned left to right, the church is to help calibrate the collective conscience. Does that make sense? All right, great. All right, any other questions? I see one here.
Thank you. I'm beginning Rob Bell. You may have heard of him.
Yeah.
He wrote a book and kind of concluded in our world that everything is spiritual.
Yeah.
I kind of get to thinking about that. John Eldredge writes, the battle is over our heart.
Yeah.
War between good and evil. Sorry, thank you. God and Satan. My voice is not what I'd like it to be. I'm sorry.
We identify this